Hey guys, tonight we're trading your cozy bed for a creaky saddle and the open road. Specifically, the very long, dusty, and occasionally terrifying roads of feudal Japan. You're not a tourist. You're a samurai setting off on a month's long campaign. Forget glamorous duels for a second. Your first real enemy? Sheer, soul-crushing boredom mixed with blisters. Seriously, if the dysentery or an arrow doesn't get you, the monotony might just make you wish they had. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment below telling me what city you're listening from and the time right now. I love imagining where in the world these stories are drifting off to. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The dawn cracks like a raw egg yolk over the horizon, painting the mustering ground in watery yellows and grays. You feel it before you see it properly, the weight, not just the yoroi armor strapped to your body, a cool 20-30 kilos of lacquered metal plates, silk cords, and leather that feels heavier with every passing hour, but the weight of what's ahead. Miles, endless miles. Your lord's banner, a bold splash of color against the muted morning, snaps sharply in the breeze. That's your compass now. You swing yourself onto your horse, or if you're lower rank, you adjust the heavy pack strapped to your back. The saddle leather groans, a familiar sound that's about to become the soundtrack to your existence. There's a jingle of bits, a snort from a nearby horse, the low murmur of hundreds of men. Ashigaru foot soldiers, fellow samurai, porters, all steeling themselves. No grand speeches, just the grim, practical silence of impending effort. The order ripples through the ranks, barely more than a hissed command passed back. And then, you move. One foot in front of the other, or rather, one hoof. The initial crush of bodies slowly thins out into a long, snaking column on the rough, unpaved Kaido road. Dust. Oh, the dust. It's immediate. It coats your tongue, grits between your teeth, finds its way inside your armor to itch your skin. It rises in lazy, golden clouds kicked up by thousands of feet and hooves ahead of you, hanging in the still morning air like a tangible thing. You tie a thin cloth over your nose and mouth, but it's a flimsy barrier. The sun, initially weak, starts to flex its muscles. Heat builds under your armor, trapped like a sauna. Sweat trickles down your temples, stings your eyes, soaks the padding under the metal plates. Every step your horse takes sends a rhythmic jolt up your spine. The landscape scrolls past fields, scrubby hills, more fields. A distant village hastily shuttered as your army approaches. It's repetitive, hypnotic in its monotony. Your mind starts to wander. Did you pack enough spare tabby socks? Is that strange gurgle in your stomach just hunger, or something worse? Mainstream knowledge alert. This slog was the brutal reality. Campaigns could cover 20-25 kilometers a day after day, week after week, often on terrible terrain. Forget sprinting into glorious battle. Endurance was the first test. Hours bleed into each other. The sun climbs, hammers down. The only breaks are brief, strictly regimented stops, dictated by the needs of the column and the scouts ahead. Dismounting is a blessed relief, a chance to stretch legs screaming from being clamped to a horse, or to ease the raw ache in your shoulders from carrying your gear. You gulp tepid water from your bamboo canteen. Maybe gnaw on a rock-hard rice ball, onigiri stuffed with pickled plum, salty, sour, and strangely fortifying. You check your horse's hooves for stones, adjust a slipping saddle strap. Personal needs? Well, modesty is a luxury. You find a discreet-ish spot off the side of the road, nature's call answered with nature as your only privacy screen. Obscure gem. That elaborate armor? Surprisingly practical. The kusazuri tasset plates hanging from the waist could be discreetly hitched up or parted, offering a somewhat more dignified solution than wrestling with layers of civilian clothing. Back on the road, the dust, the heat, the rhythmic swaying. Your eyes glaze over. You count steps, you count clouds. You try to remember every line of a favorite poem. You think about home, the smell of wood smoke, the quiet of your garden, the lack of dust. The sheer grinding length of it all settles on you like the dust itself. Controversy Corner. Historians still bicker over scrolls, trying to pin down the exact ratio of time spent marching versus fighting. Was it 90% marching? 95%? More? Everyone agrees the glamour was vastly outweighed by the grind. The light starts to soften, deepening into long, golden afternoon shadows. The relentless pace hasn't slackened, but the quality of the air changes, becoming slightly cooler, carrying the scent of damp earth from nearby fields or pine from distant hills. Exhaustion is a deep ache in your bones now, a familiar companion. Ahead, a ripple of movement. Scouts doubling back. Word passes down the line, whispered like a prayer. The chosen campsite is near. Just a little further. The promise of stopping, of rest, pushes weary muscles that final stretch. You crest a small rise, and below, nestled near a river bend, you see it, a vast, chaotic sprawl beginning to take shape as the vanguard starts setting up. Relief washes over you, thick and sweet. The day's march is done. But as the column snakes down towards the riverbank, the dust of the road settling onto the first tents being pitched, a new thought surfaces. How many more dawns like this? How many more miles of this dust? The campaign has barely begun. The fireflies aren't out yet, but the first cooking fires are being lit down by the water, tiny orange pinpricks in the gathering dusk. The smell of wood smoke mixes with the lingering dust and horse sweat. It's not home, but for tonight, it's a stop. A place where the saddle's groan is finally silenced, and the weight, for a few precious hours, can be shrugged off onto the earth. You lead your tired horse towards the river's edge, the cool, damp air near the water a balm after the day's furnace. The frantic energy of setting camp surrounds you, the rhythmic thump-thump-thump of tent pegs being hammered into the yielding earth, the sharp clack of firewood being broken over a knee, the low curses of men wrestling with stiff canvas. You find your assigned spot, a patch of flattened grass near a gnarled willow. Dismounting feels like shedding a second skin made of lead. The simple acts, unfastening your saddle, rubbing down your equally weary horse with handfuls of coarse grass, setting out your meager bedroll, are performed with the numb efficiency of pure exhaustion. Your stomach growls, a hollow echo in the cooling air. But before food, something else pulls you. The promise of warmth, light, and most importantly, other people. You follow the scent of wood smoke thickening in the twilight, drawn like a moth to the growing constellation of campfires blooming along the riverbank. You find your comrades, the small group of men you've marched, eaten dust, and shared wary glances with for weeks. Their faces are familiar landscapes of weariness, etched with grime. A space is wordlessly made for you near the crackling flames. The heat radiating from the fire is almost painful at first on your chilled, sweat-damp skin, then blissfully penetrating. You shrug off the heaviest parts of your armor, sighing as the pressure lifts, and hold your stiff, cold hands towards the dancing orange light. The fire pops, sending a shower of sparks swirling upwards like miniature stars against the deepening violet sky. Someone passes a shallow wooden bowl filled with a steaming, murky concoction. Tonight's kameh, the camp stew. It smells mostly of smoke and river water, but you glimpse a few floating grains of rice, maybe a sliver of dried fish or a foraged wild onion. You slurp it down, the warmth spreading through your chest, chasing away the last of the day's bone-deep chill. Mainstream knowledge alert. Campfires were the absolute heart of the campaign experience. Beyond warmth and cooking, they were vital social hubs, melting the rigid hierarchy enforced on the march, fostering camaraderie and shared experience among warriors of all ranks, at least within their immediate groups. As bellies are filled, even if only partially, and muscles begin to unknot, the atmosphere shifts. The initial heavy silence gives way to murmurs, then low conversation. Someone produces a small flask. Maybe sake smuggled past the quartermaster. Maybe just harsh local shochu. It's passed around, each man taking a small, appreciative sip, the fiery liquid a brief, potent reminder of sensation beyond fatigue and dust. Then the stories begin. Not grand tales of battlefield glory recited by bards. Those come later for the lords. No, these are the raw, personal narratives shared between men who've seen the same hardship. An older samurai, his face a roadmap of wrinkles illuminated by the firelight, starts recounting a skirmish from a campaign decades past. His voice is low, gravelly. He talks about the terror of an ambush in a mountain pass, the confusion, the smell of wet earth and blood, and the sheer, dumb luck that saw him stumble into a hidden cave while his pursuers thundered past. He doesn't boast. He sounds almost bewildered by his own survival. You lean in, mesmerized. This isn't history polished for scrolls. It's history lived, breathed, and still trembling slightly in the memory. Obscure gem. Storytelling was often accompanied by specific subtle gestures passed down. A finger tracing a scar, a certain way of tapping a pipe stem, or mimicking the whoosh of an arrow with a breath. Visual shorthand understood only within the warrior class. As the night deepens and the fire burns lower, casting longer, dancing shadows that seem to reach for the edge of the woods beyond the camp, the mood turns, the stories shift. Whispers of the Yurei, restless spirits, begin. Someone mentions the old battleground rumored to be just a day's march north. They say on misty mornings, murmurs a younger warrior, his eyes wide in the gloom, you can see shapes moving in the fog, figures without heads, or sometimes just the sound of armor dragging through the wet grass. Someone else adds a tale heard from a monk, a woman in white who appears near rivers, luring tired soldiers into the deep water with a sorrowful song. The crackle of the fire seems louder now. The darkness beyond its circle feels thicker, more watchful. Even the bravest among you might unconsciously edge a fraction closer to the warmth and light. Controversy corner. Historians still debate how much these ghost stories served as genuine belief versus psychological coping mechanisms. Were they warnings? Morality tales? Or simply a thrilling way to inject adrenaline into the numbing routine, a shared shiver that reaffirmed you were alive? The answer, lost in the smoke of 1,000 campfires, likely contained a bit of both. You stare into the glowing embers, the images conjured by the tales flickering in your mind alongside the dying flames. The exhaustion is still there, a deep tide pulling at you, but it's mingled now with the strange comfort of shared humanity. The laughter at a crude joke, the respectful silence during a harrowing tale, the collective flinch at a ghost story well told. You feel the ache in your muscles, the grit under your fingernails, the lingering dust in your throat. But you also feel the warmth of the fire on your face, the solid presence of your comrades at your shoulders, the low hum of conversation punctuated by the night sounds, an owl's mournful call far away, the constant murmur of the river. The vast, impersonal machinery of the campaign grinds on tomorrow. But here, now, in this fragile circle of light and shared stories, you are simply a man among men, finding solace in the oldest human ritual, weaving meaning and connection from the darkness with nothing but words and fire. The last log collapses in a shower of sparks that briefly illuminate weary faces turned towards the warmth. Someone yawns, a sound that seems to trigger a wave of others. The stories taper off into comfortable silence, broken only by the river's whisper and the distant sounds of the settling camp. The fire is now just a bed of pulsating crimson embers, radiating a deep, soporific heat. You pull your thin blanket closer. The saddle's groan is gone, replaced by the crackle of cooling wood and the soft sigh of the night. Tomorrow's dust feels a lifetime away. Here, by the dying fire, with the ghosts of stories still whispering at the edges of your consciousness, sleep doesn't feel like surrender, but like sinking into the quiet heart of the night itself. You feel your own eyelids growing heavy, the images from the stories blurring into the darkness behind them. The warmth, the shared silence, the river's constant lullaby. It's a different kind of armor, just for tonight. Dawn arrives not with a bang, but with the persistent ache in your shoulders, and the insistent crow of a rooster from a distant, unseen farm. The camp stirs with the groans of men and the snorts of horses, a reluctant reawakening to dust and miles. But, as you roll up your thin blanket, fingers stiff with the night's chill, your hand brushes against a small, hard object secured within the inner folds of your traveling pack, tucked safely away from the elements and the jostle of the march. It's not a weapon, not a ration. It's your yatate, your portable writing kit. The simple touch of its familiar lacquered wood case is a tiny anchor, a reminder of a self beyond the armor and the slog. After the morning's rituals, gulping down cold rice gruel, tightening saddle girths, the inevitable cloud of dust rising as the column lurches forward, the monotony of the road descends once more. Hours stretch. Your thighs ache from gripping the horse. The landscape blurs. Your mind, desperate for distraction, drifts back to the yatate. During a brief midday halt under the scant shade of a lone pine tree, while others slump against packs or sharpen blades with mechanical boredom, you find a relatively flat rock. You unstrap the yatate from your belt. Opening the compact wooden case feels like cracking a seal on a different world. Inside, nestled in precise compartments, a small, hollow bamboo tube acting as an inkwell. You carefully add a few drops of water from your canteen and grind the solid ink stick against its stone base inside the tube. A slender bamboo brush, with its tip protected by a bamboo sheath, and a narrow sheaf of tough, folded washi paper. The scent of the pine mingles with the sharp, clean smell of the ink as you grind it. It's a small, potent aroma of order amidst the chaos of camp and road. Mainstream knowledge alert. Literacy and cultural pursuits were highly valued among the samurai class. Calligraphy, shodo, and poetry composition, kanshi, or waka, weren't just hobbies. They were essential markers of refinement, discipline, and inner cultivation, seen as complementary to martial prowess. The ideal of bunbu ryodo, the pen and sword in accord, carrying a yatate was common for any warrior of means. You dip the brush tip into the freshly made ink. The texture of the coarse washi under your fingertips is grounding. What to capture? The oppressive heat? The grinding boredom? Too immediate, too raw. Instead, you think of the willow by last night's camp, its long fronds trailing in the river like green hair. You recall the precise, fragile curve of a single firefly that had blinked near your face just before sleep took you. You shape the characters slowly, deliberately, feeling the brushes drag on the paper. The poem that emerges is short. A traditional waka structure, 5 lines. It speaks not of war or duty, but of the willow's reflection, the firefly's brief light against the river's dark flow. It's a tiny act of defiance against the march's erasure of beauty, a way to trap a fleeting moment of peace before it vanished in the dust. Folding the paper carefully, you tuck it back into the yatate case. It holds a piece of your quiet observation, a secret shared only with the page. Obscure gem. Samurai weren't above a bit of battlefield doodling or cartooning. Surviving scrolls and diaries, sometimes contain surprisingly irreverent marginalia. Quick, satirical sketches of grumpy commanders, caricatures of enemy lords, or even comic strips depicting mishaps on the march. Think of it as medieval manga, sketched on the fly. Later, as the column halts again near a muddy stream to water the horses, you see another samurai, perhaps someone you spoke little to around the fire, also hunched over his open yatate. He's not writing poetry. He's meticulously sketching the gnarled root system of an ancient cedar exposed by the stream bank. His brow is furrowed in concentration, the tip of his tongue just visible between his lips. You exchange a brief, silent nod of recognition. No words are needed. The shared act of creation, of looking closely at something beyond the next muddy step, creates an instant, quiet bond. You might even swap your folded poem for a look at his detailed root drawing later, a small exchange of inner worlds amidst the outward grind. Controversy Corner. Historians pore over these personal writings, poems, diary fragments, sketches, endlessly. Was this intense focus on nature and fleeting beauty during war primarily a form of escapism? A spiritual practice seeking Zen-like mindfulness? Or simply the ingrained habit of cultured men clinging to their identity? The debate rages, proving that even a hastily scribbled poem by a dusty warrior can hold layers of meaning centuries later. The afternoon wears on, the sun a relentless weight. But carrying the yatate feels different now. It's not just an object. It's a potential, a promise of a brief escape hatch from the relentless present. You find yourself actively looking for things worthy of the ink. The way sunlight fractures through a dragonfly's wing, the unexpected pattern of moss on a roadside stone marker, the weary but determined set of an old ashigaru's shoulders as he adjusts his heavy pack. Each observation becomes a potential character stroke, a line in a mental sketch. It sharpens your senses, pulling you out of the numb trance of the march. The act of seeing, of noticing detail amidst the blur, becomes its own kind of discipline, a mental whetstone. As dusk approaches and the familiar ritual of finding camp begins, the yatate is safely secured again. Your body is as weary as ever, coated in a fresh layer of grime, but inside there's a subtle shift. The dust still coats your tongue, but you also taste the faint, clean memory of the ink. The ache in your hand isn't just from gripping reins, it's a pleasant stiffness from the brush's movement. You pitched your small tent, the routine motions feeling a fraction less mechanical. You glance towards the gathering point for the evening fire, anticipating its warmth and chatter. But tonight, you also carry the quiet satisfaction of the willow poem folded against your chest, a tiny, personal victory wrested from the day's monotony. The campfire's light will soon flicker on faces, but for a moment, you see the world through the lens of brushstrokes yet unmade possibilities, waiting in the dark lacquered box at your hip. The weight of the march is still there, but nestled within it, lighter than a folded paper, is the quiet hum of a mind that found a way to breathe, to create, even here, in the mud and the dust. The first stars begin to prick through the violet sky, cold and distant. You take a slow, deep breath, the air cooling rapidly, carrying the scent of damp earth and the promise of another fire. The act of writing, of drawing, it wasn't about changing the campaign. It was about holding on to a sliver of yourself, a quiet defiance, etched not in steel, but in ink and observation. You touch the yatate case once more, a small, solid reassurance against the vast, uncertain road ahead, before turning towards the gathering flames and the murmur of voices ready to weave stories once again out of the night. But tonight, the circle of firelight holds a different energy. Instead of rapt faces turned towards a storyteller, you see clusters of men hunched low, shoulders tense, eyes fixed intently on the ground before them. The air thrums not with whispered tales, but with the sharp clatter, clatter, clatter of dice rattling in a wooden cup, the soft slap of painted cards hitting a spread-out cloak, and the sudden, explosive groans or stifled whoops that follow. The scent of wood smoke is undercut by something sharper, the tang of anticipation, the metallic bite of risk. Welcome to the camp's other great pastime, where boredom meets adrenaline head-on, gambling night. You squeeze into a space near your usual comrades. In the flickering light, Tanaka, a grizzled veteran with fingers permanently stained from pipe smoke, is vigorously shaking a worn Ban Shugaroku cup. The game is simple, a racing game played on a cloth board, where your progress depends entirely on the roll of 2 dice. Players bet dried beans, bits of hardtack, even promises of extra guard duty shifts. Tanaka slams the cup down. All eyes lock onto the upturned vessel. He lifts it, a collective intake of breath. Roku ni! 6-2, someone hisses. Tanaka grunts, moving his carved wooden piece forward. The man beside him groans, pushing a small pile of beans towards Tanaka. It's not money. Coin is scarce and tightly controlled, but in this economy of deprivation, those beans represent tomorrow's marginally less miserable breakfast. Mainstream knowledge alert. Gambling was rampant in samurai camps. Ban Shugaroku, similar to backgammon, and early forms of hanafuda, flower cards, were incredibly popular. Stakes were often goods, rations, or favors, providing a vital thrill and social outlet, though lords periodically issued stern, and often ignored, edicts against it. Your gaze shifts to another group nearby. Here, the game is quieter, more intense. Hanafuda cards, their thick paper, decorated with stylized flowers and scenes from the 12 months, are fanned out in careful hands. Players discard, draw, calculate points silently. The flickering firelight dances on the intricate chrysanthemums and maple leaves painted on the cards. A young ashigaru, face pale with concentration, lays down a specific combination, the goko, 5 lights, his hand trembling slightly. A low whistle escapes an onlooker. The pot in the center, a collection of dried fish strips and a coveted lump of brown sugar, shifts towards him. The defeated player sighs, rubbing his face. The tension is palpable, a different beast from the battlefield's roar, but no less real for the stakes involved. Obscure gem. Forget lucky rabbit's feet. Samurai gamblers had specific battlefield superstitions, rubbing a specific part of their helmet, crest, date, before a crucial roll, facing a particular direction, often towards home or a lucky shrine, or even whispering a protective charm, darani, known only within their clan or unit, were common rituals believed to sway Lady Luck. Feeling lucky tonight? It's Kenji, the wiry scout known for his sharp eyes and sharper tongue. He nudges you, holding out a set of simple bone-white dice. Simple, Chohan. Odds or evens. The game is pure chance. He shakes the dice in his closed fist. You hesitate. The memory of yesterday's meager rations is fresh. But the rhythmic clatter of the dice, the focused energy of the circle, the sheer distraction it offers from aching muscles and the endless road is magnetic. You feel the pull. Odds, you say, your voice sounding rougher than intended. Kenji grins, a flash of teeth in the firelight. He opens his hand. 2 dice, a 3 and a 2. 5. Odds. A small, satisfied warmth spreads through you as Kenji mock scowls and tosses you a single precious dried plum from his dwindling stash. The victory is tiny, meaningless in the grand scheme, but the jolt of pleasure is real, a spark in the monotony. Controversy Corner. Historians endlessly dissect excavated dice and gambling tokens. Were games like Chohan purely about diversion and tiny thrills? Or did they serve a darker purpose? A way for lower-ranking warriors to vent frustration and simmering aggression in a mostly controlled setting, preventing larger conflicts. The dice, silent in the dirt now, offer no clear answers. The night wears on. Fortunes shift with the wind. You win a few rounds of Chohan. lose spectacularly at a round of Hanafuda. Goodbye, extra salt ration. And watch Tanaka lose his entire bean windfall to a remarkably lucky foot soldier. The atmosphere oscillates between focused tension and bursts of raucous laughter at someone's spectacularly bad luck. Arguments flare, quick and hot, over a disputed point or a perceived misroll, but comrades quickly intervene, pulling men apart with gruff admonishments before blows land. It's a contained chaos, a pressure valve releasing steam. You see a high-ranking retainer stroll past the edge of the firelight, his face impassive in the shadows. He pauses for a moment, observing the scene, the hunched figures, the clatter of dice, the intense faces. He doesn't intervene, doesn't scowl. Perhaps he understands the necessity of the release. Or maybe he's just calculating the odds on tomorrow's skirmish. He moves on, melting back into the darkness beyond the fire's reach. As the fire burns lower, the gambling fever slowly subsides. The intense clusters loosen. Men stretch, yawn, check their dwindled or slightly augmented pockets of small goods. The conversations turn back towards the mundane, the quality of the water at the last stop, the rumored state of the road ahead, the persistent ache in a shoulder. The adrenaline fades, leaving a familiar weariness, but one tinged with the residue of the night's artificial excitement. You pat the small, hard-won, dried plum in your pouch. Kenji claps you on the shoulder, a gesture half commiseration, half camaraderie after shared risks. Tanaka, now beanless, is already sharpening a dagger with exaggerated care, muttering about dice being clearly weighted. The shared experience, the collective breath held and released over small squares of painted paper or carved bone cubes, has woven another thread into the fabric of the group. Tomorrow's dust awaits. The road is long. But for a few hours, amidst the clatter and the groans, and the rare, sweet taste of a dried plum won on a roll of the dice, the weight of the campaign felt different. Sharper, maybe, but also lighter, dispersed into the night air with the wood smoke and the laughter. You lean back against your pack, the hard ground familiar beneath you. The fire's warmth is still there, soaking into your tired bones. The dice have fallen silent. The cards are tucked away. Above, the stars seem brighter now, colder and clearer than the heat of the gamble. The quiet murmur of the camp settling for sleep replaces the clatter. The thrill fades, leaving the deep, underlying exhaustion, but also a strange, quiet contentment. You'd risked little, won little, lost little, but you'd felt something other than dust and fatigue. And in the endless stretch of the campaign, that small spark of feeling, however fleeting, however trivial, felt like a victory all its own. The last embers pulse like sleepy hearts. You close your eyes, the phantom rattle of dice still faintly echoing in your mind, blending with the river's distant sigh. The phantom rattle of dice fades, replaced by the deep, rhythmic breathing of sleeping men around you. Dawn breaks, gray and damp, mist clinging to the riverbanks like a shroud. The camp stirs with the usual reluctant groan, stiff limbs unfolding, the metallic clank of armor being donned, the low murmur of voices thick with sleep. The taste of last night's small victory, or defeat, is a faint memory, washed away by the gritty reality of another day's march. As you saddle your horse, fingers fumbling with cold buckles, you notice a small group gathering near the smoldering remains of the central fire, not for dice or cards, but for something quieter, more deliberate. Intrigued, you lead your mount closer. Under the dripping branches of the old willow, partially sheltered from the fine, misty rain, two figures sit cross-legged on a spread-out ground sheet. Between them lies a compact, folding wooden board, its grid lines precise. Small, carved wooden pieces, some lacquered black, others a pale, natural wood, stand in neat ranks. It's a shogi board. One player is Murata, a thoughtful, middle-aged retainer known for his calm demeanor. His opponent is a surprisingly young Hatamoto, bannerman, his face still smooth but set in fierce concentration. Murata makes a move, his calloused finger placing a piece with a soft click. The young Hatamoto frowns, chewing his lip, his gaze darting across the board as if surveying a miniature battlefield. Nearby, another samurai sits slightly apart, a small, portable writing desk balanced on his knees. He's grinding ink with meticulous care, his brush poised over a sheet of paper, seemingly oblivious to the mist and the camp's waking bustle. The air here feels different, focused, almost serene, charged with a different kind of intensity than the gambling frenzy. Mainstream knowledge alert. Mental discipline was paramount. Strategy games like shogi, Japanese chess, and Go were not mere diversions. They were seen as vital training for the battlefield mind, teaching foresight, patience, pattern recognition, and the acceptance of calculated loss. Calligraphy, shodo, demanded intense focus and control, seen as a moving meditation that honed the spirit. You find a relatively dry spot on a mossy log nearby, letting your horse crop at the wet grass. Watching the shogi match unfold is mesmerizing. Murata's moves seem slow, almost ponderous, but each one subtly constricts the young Hatamoto's options. The young man attacks fiercely, sacrificing pieces in bold gambits reminiscent of a cavalry charge. Murata absorbs the pressure, retreating strategically, then countering with a single, devastating piece placement that forces a gasp from his opponent. "Tsumi," Murata says softly. Checkmate. The young Hatamoto stares at the board, frustration warring with respect on his face. Murata offers a small, knowing nod. "Aggression without sight of the whole field is merely noise," he murmurs, beginning to reset the pieces. The lesson is clear, delivered not in a lecture hall, but here, on damp earth, with carved wood soldiers. Obscure gem. Portable shogi sets for campaigns were ingeniously designed. Pieces often had characters carved on their bottoms instead of tops. Why? So the board could be quickly flipped over in case of approaching superiors or sudden action, instantly disguising the game as an innocuous wooden tray. Deception started at the game board. Your gaze shifts to the calligrapher. He's not writing poetry now. He's copying a passage, his brush moving with fluid, controlled grace. You recognize the opening lines. Sun Tzu said, "The art of war is of vital importance to the state." He's transcribing the art of war. The characters flow onto the paper, bold and balanced. You watch the tension in his wrist, the absolute stillness of his body except for the precise movement of his hand. The mist beads on his shoulders, but his focus is unbroken. It's a different kind of preparation, a sharpening of the mind's blade as surely as another man might whet his katana. The rhythmic scratch of the brush on the coarse paper, the slow unfurling of ink, becomes a quiet counterpoint to the distant sounds of breaking camp. Controversy Corner. Did samurai actually apply complex strategic texts like The Art of War or Hagakure directly in the chaotic heat of battle? Historians are deeply divided. Some argue these texts provided essential philosophical frameworks and long-term strategic thinking. Others contend that battlefield decisions were made on instinct, experience, and immediate necessity, and the value of these texts lay more in cultivating the Bushido spirit and disciplined mindset before conflict, rather than as literal, tactical manuals in the melee. The temptation to join grows. You rummage in your own pack. Besides the yatate, you carry something else, a small, cloth-wrapped bundle. Unfolding it reveals a simple Go board, scratched onto a thin, flexible wooden sheet, and a pouch of smooth, black and white river stones. Go is older, deeper, more abstract than shogi. You find kaito, a quiet Ashigaru spearman with unexpectedly keen eyes, who you'd once seen studying a Go problem scratched in the dirt during a rest stop. You gesture with the board. A rare smile touches his lips. He settles opposite you on the damp ground. No words are exchanged. The rules are universal. You take black stones. He takes white. The first stone placed on the intersection of lines makes a satisfying talk. The game unfolds silently, a dance of territory and influence played out on 19 by 19 lines. The mist swirls. The camp noises, the shouts of men forming up, the clank of gear seem to recede, muffled by the intense focus required. Placing each stone demands absolute presence. You must read not just the next move, but several moves ahead, anticipating Kaito's intentions, defending your own potential territory. It's mentally exhausting, yet strangely cleansing, pushing thoughts of blisters, dust, and tomorrow's unknown dangers to the very edges of your consciousness. There is only the board, the stones, the patterns forming and dissolving. Kaito places a white stone with deceptive simplicity, simultaneously threatening one of your developing groups while extending his own influence towards the center. You pause, fingers hovering over your pouch. The complexity unfolds in your mind. This isn't about swords or banners. It's pure, abstract conflict and cooperation. It forces patience, humility, the acceptance that a small loss now might secure a greater gain later. You counter, not attacking directly, but reinforcing a weak spot. Kaito nods almost imperceptibly. The game continues. Mainstream knowledge alert. Go was particularly revered for its depth and its ability to cultivate strategic thinking that transcended literal warfare, focusing on balance, influence, and the long game. A horn blast, sharp and urgent, shatters the quiet intensity. The column is forming up. The mist is lifting, revealing the gray expanse of the road ahead. You and Kaito freeze mid-move, then share a look of mutual understanding. The game is suspended, unfinished. No need for words. You carefully scoop the stones back into their pouches, fold the wooden board. Murata and the young Hatamoto are already packing their shogi set. The calligrapher carefully caps his ink, his brush meticulously cleaned. The brief oasis of mental focus dissolves back into the practical demands of the march. As you swing back into the saddle, the familiar ache settling into your bones, something feels subtly different. The weight of the armor is the same. The dust, as you move off, will be the same. But your mind feels clearer, sharper. The intense focus of the Go game, the lesson in patience from the shogi match, the disciplined calm of the calligrapher, they linger. The road ahead isn't just a physical trial. It's a vast, uncertain board. The pieces are armies, terrain, weather, fortune. As your horse plods forward, kicking up the first clods of mud on the damp road, you find yourself looking ahead not just with weary resignation, but with a fraction more awareness, scanning the rising terrain, the distant tree line, not just for ambushes, but for patterns, for possibilities, for the subtle interplay of forces you practiced with mere stones and ink. The mental whetstone has been used. The campaign grinds on, but the mind within the helmet feels a little more prepared, a little less adrift in the dust, carrying the quiet echo of stones clicking on wood and the smooth flow of ink on paper into the gray morning. The damp mist clings, then reluctantly burns away under a strengthening sun. The column snakes forward, the familiar rhythm reasserting itself. Hoof, fall on mud, the creak of leather, the low murmur of voices, the omnipresent dust rising again as the ground dries. The mental clarity from the morning's games fades incrementally, eroded by the miles, replaced by the familiar, numbing throb of fatigue. Your shoulders slump slightly under the armor's weight. The landscape blurs into a monotonous scroll of brown fields and distant hazy hills. Thoughts drift, unmoored. Then, cutting through the drone of insects and the shuffle of feet, it comes. A voice. It starts low, hesitant at first, almost swallowed by the road noise. A young Ashigaru near the front, his spear resting on his shoulder, is humming. It's a simple, repetitive melody, like water flowing over stones. The tune is unfamiliar, raw, born of the moment, but it has a pulse, a rhythm that syncs with the plodding steps. Someone further back, perhaps emboldened, adds a low harmony, a second thread weaving into the first. The humming gains strength, becomes a tentative song. The words are simple, improvised, about the ache in the legs, the dust in the nose, the longing for a specific hot spring back home, the ridiculous size of the baggage train ahead. It's not elegant. It's not courtly. It's pure, unfiltered campaign blues, sung into the teeth of the march, and it's magnetic. Mainstream knowledge alert. Music was a vital lifeline on campaign. Soldiers constantly created and adapted songs, work songs for hauling gear, marching chants to keep rhythm and morale, lamentations for home, and spontaneous ballads about the absurdities and hardships of army life. These songs, often lost to formal history, were the real soundtrack of the march. You feel your own lips twitch, almost against your will. The tune is catchy in its simplicity. Without thinking, you find yourself humming along, matching the rhythm of your horse's steps. The sound vibrates in your chest, a small physical release. Around you, others pick it up. The hesitant humming swells into a ragged chorus. Feet begin to stamp a little harder on the packed earth in time. Spear butts tap lightly against leather straps. The weight of the armor feels a fraction less oppressive, the dust a little less choking. The shared sound creates an invisible current, pulling the fragmented column into a momentary rhythmic unity. A grizzled veteran near you, his face usually set in a permanent scowl, lets out a surprisingly melodic whistle, embellishing the simple tune. Laughter ripples through the ranks, not mocking, but a release of shared recognition. Yes, this is absurd. Yes, it hurts. Yes, we're all in this dusty hell together. Sing it, obscure gem. Forget flutes and drums sometimes. Soldiers became masters of improvised percussion, tapping saya, scabbards, rhythmically against their thighs, clicking archers' thumb rings together, or even rhythmically slapping the leather straps of their suniate, shin guards, created complex, driving beats for their marching chants and work songs. The spontaneous song eventually winds down, fading like the dust settling behind the column, but the musical thread doesn't break. Later, during a grueling uphill stretch, a different sound emerges. Near the middle of the column, walking amidst porters and non-combatants, is an older man. He's not a warrior. He's a biwa-hoshi, a lute priest, one of the wandering minstrels and storytellers who often attached themselves to armies. His biwa, a 4-stringed lute with a distinctive pear-shaped body, rests against his shoulder. His fingers, thick and calloused, pluck the strings. The sound is deeper, richer, more resonant than the soldier's humming. He begins to sing. This isn't an improvised camp song. It's a fragment of the Heike Monogatari, the tale of the Heike. His voice, weathered but powerful, carries the weight of fallen Taira warriors, the sorrow of lost glories, the inevitability of karma. The raw energy of the soldier's song gives way to a deeper, more somber current. Men listen, heads slightly bowed as they trudge upwards, the epic's familiar tragedy mirroring their own uncertain fates. The biwa's mournful notes seem to echo off the hillsides, a counterpoint to the grunts of effort and the clank of gear. Controversy Corner. How much were these traveling performers simply entertainers, and how much were they vital morale officers or even informal historians? Did lords deliberately employ them to reinforce warrior ideals and loyalty through epic tales? Or did they operate on the fringes, tolerated for the distraction they provided? The biwa strings sing, but their master's precise role remains debated. As the day wears into late afternoon, the musical landscape shifts again. In a rare, extended rest stop near a clear stream, a different group gathers slightly apart. These are men from a specific region, perhaps Kyushu or Shikoku. Someone produces a simple 3-stringed shamisen, its snakeskin drumhead taut. The tune that starts is lively, intricate, and utterly different from the marching chant or the epic lament. It's fast, punctuated by sharp percussive taps on the shamisen body. Feet begin to stamp in complex patterns. Hands clap. A few men, shedding their heavier armor tops, start a dance. Quick, energetic steps, turns, and gestures that speak of festivals and home. It's a burst of pure, vibrant, regional pride, a sonic pocket of here transported into the there of the campaign. You watch, mesmerized by the speed and skill, the sheer joy radiating from the dancers despite their weariness. The infectious rhythm pulls others in, clapping along, shouting encouragement. For a few precious minutes, the streamside isn't a rest stop on a grim march. It's a village square during Obon. Mainstream knowledge alert. Regional identities remain strong. Music and dance were powerful ways for men from the same area to maintain cultural bonds and homesickness, reinforcing unit cohesion and providing a vital emotional anchor far from home. The horn sounds for departure, cutting the shamisen's last vibrant note short. The dancers stop, breathing heavily, grinning. The regional pocket of sound collapses back into the larger noise of the moving army. You swing back into the saddle. The ache returns, the dust rises, but the echoes linger. The low hum of the marching song vibrates in your bones. The biwa's mournful resonance hangs in the air like wood smoke. The frantic energy of the regional dance sparks in your memory. Music hasn't shortened the road. It hasn't lightened your pack, but it has woven threads of connection to your comrades in the shared rhythm of the march, to the vast tapestry of history and tragedy through the epics, to the vibrant, irreplaceable place you call home through the regional tunes. It has given voice to the weariness, the absurdity, the sorrow, and the stubborn, flickering joy that persists even here. As the column moves off, the only sounds are the familiar ones of the march. But you carry the memory of the song in your chest, a quiet, internal hum against the drone of the road. Ahead, the sky bleeds orange and purple where the sun begins its descent. The air cools. The first stars will be out soon, cold and distant. But for now, inside the shell of lacquered plates and weary muscle, there's a warmth, a resonance left by the day's music, a reminder that even in the longest campaign, the human spirit finds ways to sing itself through the dust, towards the uncertain night and whatever dawn may come. The road curves ahead, vanishing into the gathering dusk. You take a breath, and without realizing it, you find yourself softly humming that simple marching tune again, the rhythm syncing perfectly with your horse's steady steps. It's a small sound, barely audible over the creak of leather and the crunch of gravel, but it's yours. It's the army's. It's the defiant, weary, hopeful pulse of the march itself, beating on into the twilight. Ahead, near a bend in the river, a small circle of men kneels in unusual silence, a stark contrast to the boisterous dancing by the stream. No instruments, no singing, just an air of intense, almost sacred focus drawing you in. Curiosity tugs you down from your saddle. You loop the reins loosely around a clump of brittle reeds and pick your way across the damp, smooth stones of the riverbank. At the circle's heart is old Ito. You've seen him stand immovable as bedrock in battle and cradle his long sword with near tenderness while cleaning it. Now, he moves with the deliberate care of a novice in a tea-master's chamber. There's no finely crafted brazier, no precious Tenmoku tea bowl. Instead, 3 unsheathed katana, blades driven point first into the soft riverbank mud, form a sturdy tripod. A simple iron kettle, blackened by countless campfires, hangs suspended above them. A wisp of steam escapes its spout, hissing faintly, the water just shy of boiling. Ito kneels on his unfolded, deep blue Jinbauri campaign jacket. He produces a coarse clay tea bowl, thick-walled and unevenly glazed, with a small, unnoticed chip on its rim, a casualty of the campaign trail. Next comes a flat bamboo container holding a precious pinch of powdered matcha, its vibrant green a startling shock of life against the muted riverbank. His movements are economical, unhurried. He folds a small square of rough linen, a cleaning cloth, far from the silken fukusa of a formal tear room. Using bamboo tongs, he lifts the kettle's lid, the steam billowing momentarily in the cool air near the water. He ladles hot water into the bowl, swirling it gently to warm the clay. The sound is soft, intimate, water against rough pottery. He empties the water onto the stones beside him with a quiet splash. The bowl steams faintly in his hands. He measures the vivid green powder into the warm bowl with a bamboo scoop. A precise amount. The kettle hisses again. He lifts it from the sword tripod, the muscles in his forearm taut but controlled. The water pours in a thin, steady stream, hitting the powder. Then, he picks up a humble bamboo whisk, its prongs worn from use. He begins to whisk. Not the frantic, frothing motion of ceremony, but a slower, deeper churning. The prongs scrape rhythmically against the bowl's rough interior. A quiet, persistent shush, shush, shush fills the space, louder now than the river's murmur. The green liquid transforms, thickening, developing a velvety layer of tiny bubbles on its surface. The scent hits you, sharp, vegetal, intensely alive. It cuts through the lingering wood smoke and river damp like a blade, a pure, clean note of concentrated green. He stops whisking. The surface is a dark jade sea, lightly foamed. He rotates the bowl carefully in his hands, aligning its most pleasing aspect, perhaps the curve where the glaze pooled thickest, or the side least marred by travel, towards the man seated directly opposite him, a young, battle-weary captain. Ito offers the bowl with both hands, a slight bow of his head. The captain accepts it with equal gravity, bowing lower. He raises the bowl, turns it slightly in his palms, admiring it, acknowledging the moment and the giver. He takes 3 deliberate sips. The sound is soft, almost reverent. The heat, the bitterness, the sudden burst of grassy sweetness spreading across his tongue. It's a shock to the senses, a complete severing from the dust, the ache, the looming dread. His shoulders, perpetually tensed, seem to drop an inch. He exhales, a long, slow breath visible in the cooling air. He wipes the rim where his lips touched it with his thumb, turns the bowl again, and passes it silently to the next man. The bowl travels slowly around the circle. Each man receives it, drinks, cleanses the rim, passes it on. No words are spoken. The ritual is stripped bare, reduced to its essence. The shared vessel, the bitter green elixir, the focused silence. The steam rises, curls, dissipates. The scent hangs in the air. You watch as the bowl comes to a gruff sergeant, his knuckles scarred, his face usually set in a permanent scowl. He handles the clay with surprising gentleness. He sips. For a fleeting moment, the hard lines around his eyes soften, replaced by something like weary peace. He passes the bowl. The silence isn't empty. It's thick with shared presence, a collective exhale held within the circle. This isn't about social climbing or displaying wealth. It's about finding a sliver of stillness, a deliberate pause carved out of the relentless march of campaign life. It's about the simple, profound act of focusing entirely on the heat of the bowl in your hands, the taste on your tongue, the shared quiet with men who understand the weight you carry. The iron kettle sighs softly over the swords. The last of the steam rises, a ghost against the deepening twilight. As the final sip is taken, the circle complete. The quiet lingers, a fragile sanctuary woven from water, tea, swords, and silence, holding back the encroaching night for just a few moments longer. Dawn arrives gray and damp once more, the river mist clinging stubbornly. As you saddle your horse, fingers numb with the chill, you notice the frayed leather strap securing your sewed shoulder plate. It's worn thin, rubbed raw by weeks of friction against armor plates. A few more days of hard marching, maybe one sudden lunge and it could snap. Panic is useless. Resignation is a luxury. You rummage in your own campaign pack, past spare socks and rice balls, past the Yatate writing kit and the go stones. Your fingers close around worn leather, your personal repair roll. Unfurling it reveals a small, practical universe. There's a palm-sized whetstone, gritty and true. A roll of sturdy hemp cord, waxed against moisture. A few slender awls made of hardened bone. A small, curved needle, its eye large enough for thick thread. A folded piece of supple deerskin. A precious scrap saved for patches. A tiny tin of rendered animal fat for waterproofing. These aren't toys, they're lifelines. You find a relatively dry spot under a gnarled cedar. Off comes the sword. You examine the strap. The weak point is clear. You select the sharpest awl and the strongest cord. The work is slow, methodical. Poke the awl through the tough leather layers near the tear. Weave the waxed cord through. Pull it taut. Knot it securely. Repeat. Your breath steams in the cold air. The camp bustles around you. Men breaking down tents, feeding horses, arguing over rations. But your world narrows to the pull of the cord, the bite of the awl, the incremental mending of the frayed edge. This isn't artistry. It's battlefield triage for your gear. A snapped strap mid-march isn't just inconvenient. It could leave you vulnerable. Nearby, another samurai wrestles with a different problem. The woven lacing securing his high-date thigh armor has rotted in the constant damp, snapping in several places. He's not despairing. He's carefully unraveling sections of spare bowstring, strong, flexible, and waterproofed. With nimble fingers, he feeds the sinewy cord through the armor's lacing holes, replacing the rotten fibers strand by painstaking strand. His focus is absolute, the rhythm of his fingers almost meditative. Further off, near the smithy's temporary hearth, an Ashigaru foot soldier holds a broken naginata shaft. The long wooden pole is splintered near the blade socket. Instead of discarding it, he selected a sturdy green sapling branch cut earlier. Using his short utility knife, he's whittling one end to a precise taper, fitting it into the hollow of the broken shaft, binding the joint tightly with fresh, wet leather strips that will shrink and harden as they dry. Resourcefulness isn't a choice. It's the oxygen of the long campaign. The simple act of mending your strap anchors you. The immediate crisis is averted. But the repair roll holds other possibilities. During the day's march, your mind, freed from the immediate threat of gear failure, wanders. You recall the smooth river stones you'd pocketed days ago, drawn by their cool weight and perfect oval shape. During the next rest stop, perched on a mossy boulder, you pull them out, along with the smallest awl and a fragment of the deerskin. The work is finer now, less urgent. You bore a tiny hole through each stone's narrow end. It takes patience, steady pressure, the awl tip scraping and turning. Once pierced, you thread them with a thin, strong strand of hemp cord, knotting it securely. Simple stone beads. Not for prayer, perhaps, but to run through your fingers during the mind-numbing stretches of road. A tactile anchor. A small focus for restless hands. You see Takeshi, the young spearman known for his pipe smoking, hunched over his own project. He's salvaged a section of thick bamboo discarded from a water carrier's broken container. With meticulous care, he's hollowing out a joint, smoothing the inner bore with sand and a twisted rag. He's carving a mouthpiece from a scrap of harder wood. He's fashioning a rudimentary kiseru pipe. It won't be elegant, but it will hold tobacco, offering him his small, vital comfort away from the communal campfires. His knife moves with quiet purpose, shaving thin curls of bamboo, shaping the wood. Its creation born of necessity and longing. And then there's Kenji, the sharp-eyed scout. He sits cross-legged in the evening gloom near his tent, not gambling, not writing. He's holding a small block of pale wood, cherry, perhaps, scavenged from a farmer's fence post. His knife moves with surprising delicacy. He's not making a tool. He's carving. The shape emerging is crude, but recognizable. Jizo, the protector of travelers and children. The features are simple grooves, the round head barely defined. But Kenji's usual sardonic expression is replaced by intense concentration as his blade coaxes the form from the wood. He rubs a thumb over the rough surface. It's not art. It's a plea, a hope, a tiny weight of faith carved by calloused hands, accustomed to death, seeking protection for the long road ahead. He slips the unfinished figure into a small pouch hanging around his neck, under his armor. The act is private, almost furtive. The need it represents is universal. The campfire crackles nearby. Men nurse mended gear, whittle replacement tool handles, stitch patches onto worn tabby socks. Some, like you, hold smaller creations, the smooth stone beads, a roughly carved hairpin for a remembered wife or daughter, a replacement toggle for a pouch. The air hums with the quiet industry of hands keeping body and soul and hope intact. The whetstone scrapes along a blade's edge. The awl punches through leather. The knife shaves wood. These aren't the sounds of battle, but the persistent, vital murmur of survival and sanity. Each stitch, each whittled curve, each bead strung, is a tiny rebellion against the campaign's relentless wear. It's a way to shape something tangible, however small, in a world that feels increasingly chaotic and uncertain. You run your thumb over the reinforced strap on your sword. It's strong now. Ugly, but strong. You close your fingers around the cool stone beads in your pocket. The firelight glints on mended metal, on focused faces, on hands that fight entropy not with steel, but with cord, leather, bone, and wood. The night deepens, but the quiet sounds of making continue, a humble counterpoint to the vast, indifferent darkness pressing in, a testament to the stubborn, practical ingenuity that keeps the army, and the fragile human spirits within it, moving forward one stitch, one whittled piece, one mended strap at a time. The quiet symphony of mending, the scrape of whetstone, the rasp of awl on leather, the soft shaving of wood, fades as the camp dissolves into the gray dawn ritual. Gear is shouldered, horses saddled, the column lurches onto the road once more. The mended strap on your sword holds firm, a small victory against entropy. The stone beads in your pocket are cool and smooth under your fingertips, a tactile anchor during the monotonous sway of the saddle. But as the miles stretch, another kind of ache surfaces, deeper than muscle fatigue, sharper than hunger. The hollow pull of distance, home. Faces swim in the dust haze. A wife's smile, a child's laughter, an aging parent's quiet strength. The road stretches endlessly forward, but your thoughts strain backward, across mountains and rivers, tethered by an invisible, agonizing thread. The longing isn't abstract. It's the scent of plum blossoms in your courtyard, the taste of your mother's miso soup, the familiar creak of your own floorboards. It's the gnawing worry. Are they safe? Is the harvest sufficient? Does the roof leak after the last storm? The vast machinery of the campaign grinds on, indifferent to the small human dramas unfolding in its wake. The weight of separation settles heavier than armor. You see it etched on the faces around you, the young recruit staring blankly at the horizon, the veteran unconsciously touching a worn amulet pouch at his neck. the gruff sergeant, whose usual bark is softened by a moment of quiet contemplation. Homesickness is the silent companion, marching beside every man. Then, a ripple of unusual energy passes through the column mid-afternoon. Whispers hiss back like wind through dry grass. "Messenger! From the west!" Hope, sharp and sudden, pierces the dust haze. A lone rider, caked in mud, his horse lathered and blowing hard, pushes past the trudging ranks towards the command group at the front. He carries more than dispatches for the lords. Slung across his back is a bulging oiled leather satchel, the fumibukuro, the precious letter bag. It's the army's fragile lifeline to the world left behind. Camp, that evening, buzzes with a different tension. Men cluster near the command tents, not for orders, but hoping. The messenger, exhausted but vital, sits near a fire, sorting the contents of the satchel under the watchful eye of an officer. Scrolls for the generals. Smaller, folded papers, sealed with simple knots or blobs of wax, sometimes just a scrap tied with grass. Names are called out. Crisp and official. "Tanaka Hisao!" A weathered samurai near you startles, then pushes forward, hand trembling slightly as he accepts a folded paper. He retreats quickly, clutching it to his chest like a talisman before finding a private spot to read by firelight. You see his shoulders shake, a quick swipe of his hand across his eyes. Relief? Sorrow? News? The air thickens with shared anticipation and private dread. Mainstream knowledge alert. Maintaining morale depended heavily on communication. Professional couriers, hikiaku, formed networks, but delivery was slow, unreliable, and vulnerable to interception. Receiving a letter was a major event, often the only confirmation that home still existed. Your name isn't called. The hollow feeling deepens. You watch others receive their fragile connections. A young Ashigaru, grinning foolishly at a clumsy drawing likely from a sibling. An older warrior solemnly reading a few lines, his face unreadable. The messenger finishes distributing the official packets, and the few precious private ones he carried. The satchel looks deflated. He rises, stretching stiffly. The moment of collective hope begins to dissipate, replaced by the familiar, low murmur of disappointment and resignation settling over those left empty-handed. But wait. The messenger pauses, rummaging in a side pouch on his saddlebag, not the official satchel. He pulls out a small, grubby bundle of papers, tied haphazardly with string. "Pick these up at the last post station," he calls out gruffly to the lingering crowd. Trader from Owari province heading east. Said he'd passed near some of our home districts. Took what he could carry. It's a gamble. No official seal. No guarantee. But it's a thread. Men surge forward, names tumbling out. Is there anything for Kaga Domain? Shirakawa Village? Takamatsu? In Sanuki? Saito family? The messenger scans the scrawled names and origins on the folded scraps. He holds one up. Yamamoto? From the coast near Ise? Your heart stutters. That's your wife's family name, your region. You push forward, voice tight. Here, I am Yamamoto. He eyes you, then thrusts the small, travel-stained paper into your hand. The paper is rough, cheap. The seal is just a knotted thread. But the handwriting, your breath, catches. It's hers. The familiar, slightly uneven characters. You clutch it, the paper suddenly precious, fragile. You retreat from the crowd, finding a sliver of privacy behind a supply cart. Your fingers fumble with the knot. The paper crackles as you unfold it. The words are sparse, practical. Worries about rising rice prices. News of a neighbor's son lost in a fishing storm. The plum tree in the courtyard bloomed well. Your youngest daughter has mastered 3 more characters. She hopes you are warm enough. She sends strength. She misses you. She signed it with her name and a small, clumsily drawn flower, likely your daughter's addition. The ink is faded in places, smudged by travel. There's no grand declaration. only the profound intimacy of the ordinary, the shared life suspended. The dust, the ache, the vast distance suddenly collapse. For a moment, you are standing in your sunlit courtyard, smelling plum blossoms, hearing your daughter's voice. The tears come then, hot and silent, tracing paths through the grime on your cheeks. It's not just words, it's a piece of home, carried across war-torn lands, held now in your trembling hands. The paper is thin, but its weight is immeasurable. It's a raft in a vast, lonely sea. Around the fires that night, a different energy hums. Men who received letters read them again and again, tracing characters with rough fingers. Some share snippets aloud, a child's funny saying, a local festival remembered. Others hold their messages close, private treasures. You see Kenji, the scout, carefully copying his single precious letter onto fresh paper from his yatate, preserving the original. The urge to respond is immediate, visceral. You retrieve your own writing kit. Grinding the ink feels different tonight, charged with purpose. Folding the tough washi paper, you begin. Words pour out, reassurances you hope are true, descriptions of the land, carefully omitting the mud and fear, questions about the plum harvest, expressions of longing as deep as the mountains you've crossed. You draw a tiny, wobbly horse for your daughter. You seal it not with wax, but with a complex knot only your wife would recognize. Tomorrow you'll seek out the trader camp followers, or perhaps the weary messenger heading back west, trusting this fragile vessel to carry your heart homeward. The act of writing, of weaving this thin thread back across the void, is its own kind of armor, stronger tonight than lacquered steel. The campfire crackles, men murmur, the vast night presses in. But holding the worn paper with its precious smudged flower, the distance feels, for this fragile moment, a fraction less impossible. The road still leads into darkness, but somewhere far to the west, a lamp might be lit, waiting for a reply carried on the uncertain wind. The fragile warmth of the letter still glows against your chest, a tiny sun held within layers of cloth and lacquered plates. Dawn bleeds across the sky, not with the promise of another grinding march, but with a different, heavier tension. The camp stirs, but the usual sounds are muted, deliberate. Orders snap through the cold air, sharp and final. Armor is checked and rechecked with meticulous, almost ritualistic care. Swords slide from scabbards for one last inspection of the edge, catching the pale light before being silently returned. The air hums with a low thrum, not of voices, but of coiled energy, the taut silence of a bowstring drawn to its limit. The scouts returned hours ago, their faces grim maps of the terrain ahead. The enemy is there, massed beyond the next ridge. The waiting begins. This isn't the boredom of the endless road. This is the excruciating vacuum before the storm. Time stretches, thick and viscous. Every sense screams for action, for the release of movement, but the command is hold. Hold position, hold formation, hold your nerve. You stand within the ordered ranks, a single point in a vast, bristling geometry of men and steel. The sun climbs, painfully slow. It glints off helmet crests, off spear points, off the river snaking through the valley below. The landscape is deceptively peaceful. Birdsong drifts from the woods flanking the ridge. Bees hum among the late summer wildflowers clinging to the slope. The contrast is jarring. Beauty feels like a cruel joke. Your muscles ache with the need to do something, anything, but the discipline drilled into you for years holds you rigid. You are a statue, carved from anticipation and dread. The mind rebels against the stillness. It races, tumbles, seeks escape hatches. Around you, men employ their practiced strategies against the gnawing anxiety. The veteran beside you, his face a mask of scar tissue, methodically runs a small, smooth river stone through his fingers, over and over, a tactile mantra. His lips move silently, perhaps counting, perhaps reciting a sutra. Another warrior further down the line meticulously cleans his fingernails with the tip of his utility knife, the tiny, focused action a bulwark against the vast uncertainty. You see Kenji, the scout, eyes closed, breathing slow and deep, his chest rising and falling with deliberate rhythm. Is he meditating, or simply forcing air into lungs tight with fear? His usual sharpness is replaced by a profound stillness. The young recruit next to you trembles slightly, a fine vibration you can feel through the packed earth. He fumbles in his pouch, pulls out a dried plum pit saved from weeks ago, and starts gnawing on it obsessively, the small, sharp sound absurdly loud in the hush. You reach into your own pack. Your fingers brush the folded poem about the willow and the firefly, the go-stones, the smooth river pebble beads. None feel right. Then you find it. The small, unfinished wooden Jizo figure Kenji was carving. Its features are still rough, barely suggested, but the protective intent radiates from the crude form. You close your hand around it, the hard wood pressing into your palm. The physical sensation grounds you. You think of the Jizo back home, near the village crossroads, moss-covered and serene. You imagine its stony gaze extending across the miles, resting on this ridge, on you. It's a fragile thread of belief, a plea whispered into unyielding wood. You run your thumb over the rough carving, feeling the grain, the tiny knife marks. The simple act of touch becomes a focus, pulling your awareness away from the terrifying horizon, anchoring you in the minute details of the here and now, the rough texture of the wood, the cool metal of your gauntlet, the pressure of your feet on the earth, the slow expansion of your own breath. You are here, now, breathing, waiting. A horse snorts nervously somewhere behind the lines. The sound jolts through the ranks like a small electric shock. Heads turn, hands tighten on spears. But no horn blows, no order shouts. It was nothing, just an animal sensing the tension. The collective breath held is slowly released. The waiting resumes, heavier than before. The sun beats down. Sweat trickles under your helmet padding, itching maddeningly. You dare not move to scratch it. Discipline. The urge to fidget, to pace, to scream, builds like pressure in a kettle. You clamp down on it, locking your knees, staring fixedly at the distant tree line where the enemy waits. What are they doing over there? Counting clouds? Sharpening blades? Feeling this same acid, dread churning in their guts. The shared humanity of fear is cold comfort. Time warps. Minutes feel like hours. Hours feel like suspended eternities. You study the clouds, tracing shapes that dissolve before they fully form. You count the types of wildflowers within your limited field of vision. You recall the taste of the tea by the river, the bitterness cutting through the dust. You remember the warmth of the last campfire story, the shared laughter chasing ghosts. You think of the letter, the smudged flower drawn by your daughter's hand. These fragments of life, of feeling, feel precious and distant, islands in the rising sea of anxiety. The vast machinery of war feels poised to crush them all. The waiting is the anvil, and you are the metal, being pounded thin by the hammer blows of anticipation. Your knuckles are white around the Jizo carving. The wood feels warm now from your grip. You focus on that warmth, the solidity of it, the tiny ridges under your thumb. Breathe in, hold the warmth, breathe out. Release the tension in your shoulders, just a fraction. Breathe in. The scent of sun-warmed grass and damp earth. Breathe out. The tremble in your legs lessens, almost imperceptibly. The world shrinks to the circle of your breath, the weight of the wood in your hand, the feel of the earth beneath your feet. The ridge ahead is still there. The enemy is still there. The charge will come. But for this breath, and this breath, you are anchored. The Jizo's rough face seems to hold a silent promise. Endure. The weight of waiting presses down, immense, crushing, but within it, you find the small, hard core of stillness, carved not just from wood, but from will, one measured breath at a time. The afternoon light slants long and golden, painting the waiting army in hues of fire and bronze. The shadows stretch, reaching towards the inevitable. The silence deepens, thick enough to choke on. And still you wait. The golden light softens, blurs at the edges, like ink spreading on damp paper. The rigid lines of the waiting army soften too, dissolving into the long shadows cast by the setting sun. The sharp glint of spear points melts into the warm haze. The heavy thrum of anticipation, that taut bowstring hum, begins to fade, replaced by the softer murmur of the land settling into dusk. Crickets tentatively start their evening song, a rhythmic chirping from the long grass, weaving a gentle counterpoint to the fading tension. Somewhere far below, near the river's bend, a frog croaks, its low voice echoing across the quieting valley. The scent of sun-warmed earth rises, rich and deep, mingling with the faint, sweet perfume of hidden wildflowers crushed under countless boots. It's the smell of the world breathing out after holding its breath. Feel the coolness of the evening air now, washing over your skin like a gentle stream, soothing the heat trapped beneath layers of cloth and lacquer. Notice the way the breeze stirs the tassels on a nearby standard, a slow, lazy dance against the deepening blue of the sky. The stars begin to appear, not all at once, but one by one, tiny pinpricks of silver emerging from the vast velvet dome. They are cold, distant, ancient observers. Let your gaze drift upwards, following their slow emergence, feeling the immense, quiet peace of the night sky, enveloping the small human worries etched onto the ridge below. Your own breath deepens, slows, syncing with the rhythm of the crickets, the sigh of the wind through the pines on the higher slopes. The weight of the day, the relentless pressure of waiting, begins to lift, gently, like mist burning off a morning pond. It drifts away, carried on the cool air, dissolving into the vastness of the gathering night. The rough wood of the Jizo carving in your hand feels smooth now, warm, almost alive. Its protective presence isn't a demand, but a quiet reassurance, a small, solid anchor in the drift towards sleep. The images of the day, the dust, the letter's precious script, the shared silence of the tea circle, the focused energy of the game board, the vibrant pulse of the music, all flow together now, not as sharp memories, but as soft, overlapping colors on a dark canvas. They blend and swirl, losing their hard edges, becoming part of the gentle current carrying you away from the ridge, away from the waiting, away from the sharp lines of dawn's potential conflict. You are floating now, cradled by the cooling earth, soothed by the night's whispers, held by the slow, steady pulse of your own quieted heart. The world shrinks to the sensation of breath flowing in, cool and clean, and flowing out, releasing everything else. The stars above multiply, their soft light a gentle veil. The distant frog croaks again, a lullaby from the river. The earth holds you, the sky watches over you, the night wraps you in its deep, silent embrace. Let the last tendrils of thought unravel, like smoke from a dying fire, drifting upwards, vanishing into the star-strewn darkness. There is only peace now, only the deep, welcoming quiet, only the gentle descent into rest. The campaign, the ridge, the waiting, they belong to another time, another place. Here, now, there is only this soft darkness, this profound stillness, this perfect, weightless release into the arms of sleep. Drift, drift, let go.